Welcome to today's video, The Art of Hidden Rush. Today we're going to take a deep dive into a deck that has been in the meta ever since I started playing Gods Unchained in October of 2020. This is an essential deck to know how to play and pilot and know how to play against as well in tournament settings. Today we're going to look at all the strengths and weaknesses of Hidden Rush Deception and talk about how to appropriately play it. So let's go ahead and get into the deck list. This is my current list for Hidden Rush Deception. I do make quite a lot of changes to it and it will change throughout times, but the basic principles will remain the same. If you get a cat and you give it a knife and your opponent can't deal with it, you win the game. Yeah, simple. End the video, right? Okay, things aren't that simple. There are a lot of matchups. For instance, Nature, if they're playing Selena's Mark, you do not keep the Shadow of Lethean on. Magic has tons of ways to deal with it. Certain versions of that, you may want to not even keep it in your mulligan as well. So we have to be careful. However, the Shadow of Lethean is incredibly strong against other Deception lists and against Death lists, because Death, the only way to remove it for them is to give it Burn early in the game before they get to 6. And if they give it Burn, you can still play a knife and get 2 hits in with it before it dies from Burn. Assuming they play the Ragnarok after you play the knife. So early in the game, in your opening mulligan, you're always going to want a Pyramid Warden. And generally speaking, it's just a great open. And Pyramid Warden works excellently with Assassin's Aim. Now, another 2-drop that you want to keep in your mulligan is Armor Lurker, but it does not combo with Assassin's Aim. This is a mistake I've seen many people make. Keep in mind, Assassin's Aim gives -1 health to a minion, and Armor prevents damage, but does not prevent the -1 health. I'll show you an example clip right here of what not to do with Hidden Rush Deception. And Shape Blast in hand, and that's pretty fancy. That is pretty fancy indeed. Oh, you just don't go! Oh, you gotta be kidding me! No! No! That's not how you do it! That's not how you Hidden Rush, man! So we had to get that little public service message out there for this video. I don't want any of you making that mistake. If I see any of you making that mistake, I will yell shame at you and be very disappointed. So we're going to get through the rest of this list. So Switch Duelist is another card that's great early in the game. Got to keep in mind that if you're up against another Deception list and they're running the Strength Reduction version, this card's really bad. So be cautious of it in that matchup. Every other matchup is pretty much an early game keep. You do have to be somewhat careful against Nature and Underbrush Boar, as that will occasionally wreck you. Lady Marcella is a very cool card because you gotta keep in mind we're always playing Orpheos Distraction God Power, so we can ping off the 1/1 deadlies very easily. And some of your opponents, like for instance Light, who's playing maybe an Acolyte God Power or a Heal God Power, they don't have easy ways to deal with the 1/1 tokens. So you get a lot of value out of Lady Marcella. Ludia's Dedicant is one of the cards that I'm kind of experimenting with. It's new to the deck, but keep in mind it's a 3-mana 3/3. The Blessed is very important to the card, and one of my weekend ranked games this week was won by an Abraxas Sanctum. You've also got the added value generation, where if you play this on 5, you play Ludia's Dedicant, you use the God Power, which a lot of times you're doing anyways with this deck. You get a card from your opponent's deck, instant value generation. It gives you information because if it's in their deck, then it's currently not in their hand. If it's like a legendary, for instance. Like if you get Asterius using Ludia's Dedicant, then you know your opponent currently isn't holding Asterius. They can still top deck it, but they're currently not holding it. Merrick is one of the cool cards. It's very bursty, so the general idea behind Merrick is you play this, and then you play Assassin's Aim or Dark Knives on one of our finishers. Our finishers are Arms Dealer, Lokian Disciple, Avatar of Deception, Shadewalker, Sneaky Bruiser. If you're able to put an additional buff on these already pretty buff minions, and then Merrick alongside of that, it compounds the buff. You can actually OTK in this deck, which is quite absurd, but I have done that before. and Merrick is very good. Surprise Delivery is a recent inclusion by me, but it's a recent inclusion that I've really enjoyed. The reason being is a lot of our game is spent playing hidden minions, keeping our minions hidden so they can't attack. But when you're doing that, your opponents aren't making trades, they're building a really wide board. The one good thing that Surprise Delivery does is if you can play this, it limits how wide you can get. This particularly wrecks two opposing matchups that you could be facing potentially. Zombies, which can be a little bit of a tricky matchup because if they get a board full of zombies, they're getting all those leech damage every turn. It can be difficult to kill them. But if you flood their board, their deck is designed to summon really tiny zombies, they have issues because those barrels are clogging up space. Anubians is another classic example. You play this the turn before they play Land of the Dead, and then they file a report claiming that you're cheating because they're crying. They designed their whole deck around killing their minions, and you're not going to let them kill their minions, and they go in the corner and they cry. So Surprise Delivery, very strong against those couple of death matches, can be used as a way to push lethal even against control. 3 mana to deal 6 damage isn't really bad, and the delay factor isn't super important against control. As mentioned prior, Arms Dealer, Avatar of Deception, Loki and Disciple, and Shadewalker, all of those are kind of in the same category. There are big burst win conditions. We want to get these down, we want to apply a buff, either a Dark Knives or an Assassin's Aim, and then we want to attack their face and then keep it hidden. That way our opponent can't attack into it. Hopefully they're not playing nature so they can't remove it. And that's one of the basic win conditions in the list. Throw Sneaky Bruiser into that as well. Next, we're going to go ahead and dive into some sample games. The first game I am going to show you is the worst matchup, and that is Nature, and how to appropriately play around that matchup to get the best results. Knowing how to play your worst matchups is ultimately going to save you the most on your long-term win percentage. If you can win half of your games in your bad matchups and then dominate your good matchups, you're going to have a great win percentage with any deck that you play. Today's video is sponsored by AQUA.xyz, the best Web3 community marketplace which built in has the best analytical tools for you to make the best decisions before you buy or sell your valuable NFTs. And they have some really cool features, such as this import deck feature where you can take my deck, bam, put it up here to the deck code, and it tells you all the cards you own and all the cards you did not own. And you can sort it by currency and see how much it's going to cost. So for instance, to buy 5 of these cards, it's going to cost 1,000 gods, but it only costs 0.175501 ETH. And you can click on a card and you can learn more about the card, such as the win rate. So do you want to spend $66 for a card with a 46.8% win rate? You may be questioning FakeMews' decision to run the card in the deck in the first place. But if you do decide to purchase it, it gives you valuable information like how much you can save by just adding another currency to your wallet. I did not have the ETH to purchase this, but I have the gods, but it will cost me $14 more. Just many features like this are why AQUA.xyz is the best Web3 community marketplace on the market right now. Let's get back to the video. So there's nothing like queuing into weekend ranked and queuing into your worst matchup. And here it is. We are playing with Deception. They are playing with Nature. And we're going second. We have done absolutely everything wrong at the start of this game. They go ahead, they pick Selena's Mark God Power. Stoneskin Poison doesn't have many good targets in this matchup, and we quickly mulligan away the Shadow of Letheanon as well as in the Surprise Delivery, not important here. We keep Pietro because we want to expand wide against Nature, thinking of looking at their deck list. They've got cards like Canopy Barrage, even their God Power doesn't do great on a very wide board. Here we take the risk by playing Switch Duelist on turn 1, basically praying they don't have Underbrush Boar, and they have Canopy Barrage, so we feel great about conserving our Armor Lurker and not giving that up. as the Armor Lurker is a much higher quality minion. Then we top deck Pyramid Warden, which is something we would have preferred to play earlier anyways. So what we have here is we can see we've got a Shadewalker, we've got a Pietro in hand. The Pyramid Warden kind of delays our opponent somewhat, and they go ahead and play the Jaguar. The thing with the Pyramid Warden is you never want to necessarily just play it and, or attack into an opponent's minion and then let them just trade. Let them run into you, so we're going to go ahead and secure the additional points of face and just play the Shadewalker. Which, the idea behind Shadewalker is we've got Pietro in hand at the moment, so we can attack and hide it immediately with Pietro and already go immediately wide. And since they didn't play Lightning Strike that turn, what it tells me is they probably do not have it. And if they do not have Lightning Strike, then Shadewalker is a very, very formidable minion. And here we have a critical top deck of a Dark Knives, and that was actually the perfect card to draw. We can play the Dark Knives, go face Pip into Pietro. So not only do we have a large minion that is hidden, asking questions to our opponent, we're very wide. And our opponent did not use Lightning Strike last turn, which tells us that, hey, they probably do not have it. And this is kind of the all-in nature of playing Hidden Rush Deception. You go all in on a really large minion like Shadewalker, for instance. You put a buff on it and then you hide it. And if they can't deal with it, then the amount of damage we're going to generate from that is just going to be too much to overcome. And we've got the very nice wide board. Their God Power is a 1-in-4 proposition, which is never very reliable. And they go ahead and play Druid of Cycle, which is a card that isn't super impactful against us, which means our Shadewalker survives to get a second attack, which is absolutely devastating for our opponent. So right here, we're just going to push as much damage face as possible. One thing to note is since they're 4 wide, we get less value out of playing Surprise Delivery, even though it looks like it could possibly be a 2-turn lethal. You gotta keep in mind that they will be healing with their God Power. And here I have a difficult decision. Do I want to buy the Lambasting Wand, or do I want to buy the Bronze Servant? And I buy the Bronze Servant because the Lambasting Wand already in the Sanctum next to the Bronze Servant, our opponent can buy the Bronze Servant to weaken our Lambasting Wand. So here, all we want to do is go as wide as possible. I didn't really feel the need to necessarily hide my Shadewalker, as Wildfire is a very likely card for my opponent. So playing around that, the best option here is just to build the widest board possible and ask the question to our opponent. How are they going to deal with this very, very wide board? Well, we know that the hunt is a possibility, but they would have to spend all of their mana to play the hunt and do defensive attacks before that as well, and that would allow us to go ahead and pick off one minion with our God Power as well. So the question is do they have the hunt? And if they don't, they pretty much just die. They do indeed have the critical answer. However, we did push a lot of damage already and got them to 4. And now we're going to see a perfect example of a great situation for Surprise Delivery. And it's just really the perfect application. So our opponent has 4 minions. We're able to kill off 1 and then play Surprise Delivery. With us being at 22 and them only having 5 attack on board, playing the barrels is super annoying because they can't expand their board position and apply the necessary pressure. They're also at 4, they can only activate their God Power twice, and there's not really an easy way for nature to remove those barrels without taking the afterlife damage. So it puts them on a clock and asks them the question of how do you deal with the situation. So they go ahead, they can't play any additional minions because we flooded the board too far wide. They heal their god for 1, but ultimately that's not going to do too much. We're going to play Ludia's Dedicant. We do not want to deal damage to our god because they need to kill us very, very quickly. So we're just going to pick the only option that doesn't impact the Sanctum much, because ultimately they have the favor, and buying anything from the Sanctum does not help us. So here our opponent either needs to gain health or they need to deal with those. They need to gain health and deal with Ludia's Dedicant on the same turn. We've got Dark Knives in our back pocket and a Lion that we stole from our opponent's deck for additional burst damage. Our opponent will be able to go face, but we are at 10, and they need a little bit of extra juice. Otherwise, the Afterlife of the Exploding Barrels gives us the win, and indeed, the Afterlife of the Exploding Barrels does give us the win. And that's how you win a bad matchup. We took the risk going all in with the Shadewalker and ultimately got the result. Next up is a matchup against everyone's favorite community member, 4 question marks. They are playing a light list and we are playing our Hidden Rush Deception. So what we are going to be doing here is debating on whether or not they are playing an aggro light list or a control light list, and they don't even give us the question. They just say, hey, we're picking the Heal God power, so we are definitely control light. And in control light, Merrick is a very key burst card, and we have it right here in our opening hand, or can be a very key burst card. Here I'm thinking about our mulligan, and the clear thing to get rid of is Ludia's Dedicant, though you could argue getting rid of both eventually here. We get rid of Ludia's Dedicant into Loki and Disciple, and now having the Dark Knives with the Avatar of Deception, we've got so many bursts at 4-5 that we think that we're always going to have it, and then we mulligan it away, and guess what? It just comes back. So it was destiny. This is not a very good opening hand because we've got like nothing early game that we can play at the moment. We top deck Armor Lurker, which is very key. It gives us something on curve to play on turn 2. And what we've got now is a very basic plan. We want to play Merrick on 3, Avatar of Deception on 4, and then we want to go burst. That is our general idea here. So we get the Merrick in play. We are going to be playing Avatar of Deception next turn in almost all scenarios, and we should be rolling. They play Ghost and Eclipse, which kills the Armor Lurker, but ultimately doesn't do too much to the Merrick. The Merrick doesn't mind losing 1 strength because it's just going to gain strength when we go all in on another minion. So sticking with the plan, playing Avatar Deception. Note with Merrick, you never attack until you want to go burst. So we don't want to attack and unhide Merrick in this position because they can give it an order, they can Lice Levy it, they can do all sorts of things. So we want to keep the hidden rather than pushing the 1 point of damage. Our opponent plays Radiant Embalmer, so we just need to remember what they are going to get back from the Void. And we are just going to go all in on this Avatar of Deception. So immediately we can push 14 points of damage this turn. And that definitely seems like the main thing to do. Now, I can hide one of the minions, which is certainly a line, or instead of that, I'm going to like to play 2 Pyramid Wardens. The idea is I think that protects my board better than just hiding one and letting them attack into it. In the 2 Pyramid Wardens, you can Lights Levy, most likely 1. You probably don't have 2 Lights Levies, and even then, the Avatar of Deception probably is going to make it through this turn. Ultimately, we're also concerned about playing the hiding game because if they have Lips are sealed, then they're giving everything order anyways, and nothing really matters too much. So they go ahead and do an attack, and then recovering Sigil to gain 3 health and heal their stuff up. And here they play CERN, which is seemingly a key card. However, they don't have an answer for Merrick, which means Merrick is going to get an additional 7 points of face damage. Now, in a lot of matchups, you don't attack here with the Pyramid Wardens, but in this matchup you do. And the reason why is, for 1, we're pushing 4 extra points of damage, and for 2, we are getting enough favor to buy the Valka's Discovery and the Sanctum, which we just did. And what we're going to do here is we're going to hide our Avatar of Deception. This means you need to play Lips or Sealed right now if you've got it, is the question that we are giving to our opponent. We don't care if they Lights Levy or Merrick, because if they Lights Levy the Merrick, then the Avatar of Deception is coming forward for 7 points of damage. We pick up the Valka's Discovery mainly because our opponent can't have it. Valka's Discovery wrecks us because it removes Hidden from all of our minions. What we're doing here is we're basically being like, trying to limit our opponent's outs. Lips are sealed only affects 2 minions. They play a front line. However, we've got 9,000 different ways to deal with it. We can use our god power, we can play Stone Skin Poison, we can run out of time thinking about all the different ways we have to deal with said frontline. But at the end of the day, we have lethal, and this game really shows the potential power that Merit has. We can just simply hide our opponent's minion, we can play Stone Skin, we can actually just outright kill the minion. We've got a lot of different lines here, and we elect to play Stone Skin. The Pyramid Warden takes away the protected, and then the Avatar of Deception goes face alongside of Merit, and that does indeed deliver the lethal.